What does it take to ground 15 airports mid-flight? It isn't a bomb threat or a storm at 35,000 feet. It's one quiet phone call. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Malik Thompson's heart skipped a beat as the lounge's TV screens flickered from the flight board to breaking news. All Boeing 777-300ER fleet grounded nationwide. Then, just as quickly, the image cut away. He glanced up from his phone, where a green confirmation banner glowed. Merger received $180,000. Lily, his 8-month-old daughter, popped into his mind. She was napping peacefully in her nursery back in Los Angeles. In 24 hours, he'd be back in Hollywood Hills, toasting this moment with family. Instead, he found himself in the American Airlines flagship lounge at JFK, about to board flight AA-102 to LAX. And that's when he saw her. Heather, the lead first-class flight attendant, stood at the entrance to his pod, arms folded, lips a thin line. "Sir, may I see your photo ID?" He froze. Not the question itself, he had nothing to hide, but her tone. Curt, suspicious, as if she'd never met a black man in 12-figure mergers or mastered the art of renewable energy logistics. "Of course," he said, forcing calm into his voice. He reached into his jacket, retrieved his driver's license, and held it out. She scanned it with that handheld reader, first beep green, then another, then a third green light. 3 scans for 1 card, as if a single look at his manifest wouldn't suffice. She tucked the license into her apron. "Thank you, sir. Boarding begins in 10 minutes. Malik sat back, the leather cushion cool against his spine. Around him, the lounge buzzed with hushed chatter. Executives in slim-cut suits tapping away on laptops. A Hollywood starlet scrolling behind oversized shades. A retired couple clinking champagne flutes. He'd earned this oasis of quiet after years in Green Grid's caffeine-fueled trenches. Yet now, seated in this sanctuary, he felt less at ease than he had on a factory floor pitching investors. "Tell us where you're watching from," he muttered, more to himself than anyone. He pictured Lily's tiny hand grasping his finger. He'd built Green Grid from a one-man operation in South Central LA to a powerhouse valued at $1 billion in 3 years. He'd traded sleepless nights for breakthroughs in battery storage and solar distribution. But reputation, prestige, accomplishment, they meant nothing if a flight attendant could question his right to sit here. The lounge doors slid open. "Last call for first-class passengers." Malik rose, smoothing his dark wool blazer. He clipped a hand to his diaper bag strap. It held bottles, wipes, and a photo of Lily's toothless grin. He would not create a scene. He would not give Heather the satisfaction. He'd endure. At the jet bridge's midpoint, Heather reappeared. Her eyes narrowed. "Sir, I'll need to see your boarding pass again, just to verify." He sighed inwardly, but complied. He presented his mobile QR code. Another beep. Again and again, until the scanner finally chirped green. "Thank you," she said, stepping aside. He offered a polite nod and walked onto the Boeing 777-300ER. The cabin enveloped him in warmth. Soft overhead lighting, polished wood veneer, the gentle hum of engines waiting. He located 2A, eased Lily into her bassinet, and buckled himself in. A steward, Ben, a friendly rookie, approached with a towel and genuine smile. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Thompson?" "Water, please," Malik replied, appreciating the courtesy. Ben retreated. Heather lingered in the aisle, arms crossed, silent. He glanced at the passenger manifest pinned to her clipboard. Malik Thompson, Pod 2A, Green Grid CEO. She stared back as if that information contradicted her worldview. Then the captain's voice crackled over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 102 to Los Angeles. Please make sure your devices are in airplane mode and seats are upright." Malik flicked his phone to airplane mode and slid it into the seat pocket. He watched Heather's reflection in the cabin window, her jaw set, her eyes cold. He leaned back, took a breath, and reminded himself why he remained silent. Reputation, simplicity for Lily, avoiding an unnecessary scene. But as the seatbelt sign dinged off and service began, Heather's small acts of hostility persisted. She skipped his row for drink orders, lingered by other passengers, cleaned empty glasses beside him as if reminding him he didn't belong. He closed his eyes, imagining Lily's lullaby, the swing of her cradle back home. He could endure a few more minutes. But then Ben spilled the tray of glasses while serving the business traveler in 3D, distracted by Heather's smirk, sending shards of ice skittering across the aisle. The passenger grumbled. Heather shot Ben an icy glare before marching off. Malik's calm shattered. He leaned forward, unlocked his phone, and dialed David Parker, the CEO of American Airlines and a former Green Grid board member. David, groggy. Malik? It's 6 a.m. East Coast. Everything okay? Malik, quiet steel. David, I'm on your AA-102, first class. Ground every 777-300 ER in your fleet. Now. David, stunned. What? Malik, that's unprecedented. Malik, I'm being profiled. 15 airports will refuse service until you make this right. I'll send details. David, resigned. Understood. I'll inform ops. I'm sorry. A chill ran through the cabin as the PA clicked on. Captain. Folks, due to unforeseen operational circumstances, we will be returning to JFK. We apologize for the inconvenience. A hushed gasp swept through first class. Economy passengers craned their necks. Heather's face drained of color. Ben stared at Malik with awe. Malik looked out the window as the jet reversed course. He settled back, lifted Lily from the bassinet, and rocked her gently. The city lights of New York welcomed them home, his city, where respect had to be commanded, not assumed. He whispered to his daughter, "It's okay, baby girl. Daddy's got this." Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. When Malik Thompson woke that morning, Los Angeles was still shrouded in pre-dawn haze. From his penthouse in the Hollywood Hills, he could see the city lights flicker out one by one as dawn inched forward. Below him, the freeway arteries glowed, an intricate web that his company, Green Grid, helped power more efficiently, sustainably. He brewed a single-origin Brazilian coffee in his kitchen. Lily's nanny, Maria, already downstairs, humming softly as she prepared bottles and diapers. In the nursery, soft pastel walls were dotted with family photographs. Malik and his late wife at the county fair, Lily's first smile at 2 months, the Green Grid team celebrating their first big contract. He paused by the crib, brushing a fingertip across Lily's cheek. Her dark curls gleamed in the soft morning light. "Hello, my love," he whispered. She cooed, stretching arms toward him. Her trust was absolute, and he lived for moments like this. At 42, Malik was a man remade by ambition and by love. He'd grown up in South Central LA, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. On weekends, Malik tinkered with radios and generators, dreaming of ways to make power more affordable for his community. He'd won a scholarship to UCLA, double majored in engineering and business administration, then pitched a solar storage prototype to an angel investor in 2015. That one meeting led to seed funding, and 4 years later, Green Grid was a multi-million-dollar startup. In 2024, Green Grid closed a landmark merger, a $180 million deal that propelled the company into the Fortune 500, no small feat for a company rooted in community microgrids. Yet despite the numbers, Malik remained humble. He drove a nondescript sedan, lived in a tastefully minimalist penthouse rather than a mansion, and prioritized family dinners over boardroom accolades. That morning, he reviewed his itinerary on the kitchen island. 7 o'clock a.m., coffee with Maria and last-minute check on Lily's feed schedule. 7:30 a.m., car service to LAX flagship lounge. 10 o'clock a.m., flight AA-102 departs for LAX. 12 o'clock p.m., dinner at his parents' home in Brentwood. His phone buzzed. A notification from his COO, Ankita, flagged a glitch in the new battery management software at a pilot program site in Phoenix. He tapped a quick acknowledgement. Maria would handle the basics here. He trusted his leadership team to manage the rest. He changed into a tailored navy blazer and crisp chinos, professional but unfussy. Before leaving, he tucked a small laminated photo of Lily into his wallet. He'd need that reminder of what really mattered once the day got hectic. Outside, his black Tesla Model S pulled up. The driver, Jose, greeted him by name. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson." "Thanks, Jose," Malik replied, settling into the back seat. He exhaled, thinking of how far he'd come from that kid in South Central who never thought he'd leave his neighborhood, much less lead a billion-dollar enterprise. The ride to LAX was smooth, but his mind flickered to the Phoenix issue. He drafted a quick voice note. "Ankita, let's set up a patch update for the software tonight and run diagnostics first thing tomorrow." He hit send. Problems at scale were inevitable. Solutions defined leadership. They arrived at the flagship lounge. Malik flashed his first-class pass and entered the hushed, elegant space where he'd spent countless layovers. He ordered one of the lounge's famous avocado toast to balance his morning espresso and scrolled through messages. Congratulatory notes from board members, a text from his mother, "Can't wait to see you and Lily," and a news alert about a major utility announcing plans to buy Green Grid's new microgrid tech. He leaned back in the plush leather chair, savoring the moment. For a man who had known struggle, success felt sweet but also fragile. One misstep, a faulty board decision, a PR misfire, could unravel years of progress. He checked his watch. 10 minutes until boarding. As he gathered his things, he remembered how he'd coached his leadership team on resilience. Success is a series of failures you refuse to quit. He'd sent that message in his weekly newsletter this morning. Right now, he needed to model that same perseverance. He rose and made his way to the jet bridge, confidence in his stride. The air smelled of jet fuel and anticipation. He showed his boarding pass to the gate agent, who gave a respectful nod. But before he could step forward, a familiar voice cut through the bustling terminal. "Sir, may I see your photo ID?" Malik paused. It was Heather, the lead first-class attendant, blonde hair pulled into a tight chignon, posture rigid. Her name tag gleamed in the overhead lights. He'd encountered her once before in Miami, subtly sidelined during a layover. He'd chalked it up to corporate policy, but here at JFK, it felt different. An echo of old prejudices in a new supposed safe space. "Of course," he said evenly, reaching into his pocket to produce his driver's license. She scanned it once. No beep. Then again and again, as if her scanner required extra convincing. 3 green lights later, she returned it without meeting his gaze. "Thank you, sir." He nodded, stepped past her, and onto the Boeing 777-300ER. The cabin enveloped him in a cocoon of soft lighting and polished wood. 2 rows ahead, he spotted Ben, the junior attendant who'd greeted him with genuine warmth last month. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," Ben smiled, handing him a hot towel. Malik returned the towel and whispered thanks. In that small exchange, he felt the contrast between kindness and suspicion, between people who saw his humanity and those who saw only his skin color. He reached seat 2A, gently settled Lily into her bassinet, and buckled himself in. He looked out the window at the jet bridge sliding away from the terminal. This flight marked not just a trip home, but a challenge. To stay composed under pressure. To protect his daughter's innocence from the world's biases, and to remember that true power lay in action, not in words. As the engines roared to life and the runway lights stretched before them, Malik closed his eyes and repeated a silent vow. No matter what happened next, he would stand for Lily's future. He would ground more than just a plane if he had to. He'd ground injustice itself. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. As Malik slipped off the jet bridge and into the cabin aisle, he felt the familiar thrum of the Boeing 777-300ER around him, the gentle vibration of the floor. the quiet hiss of conditioned air. He paused to settle Lily into her bassinet, tucking a soft blanket around her and smoothing the buckle straps with practiced care. She cooed, half asleep, and he offered her a tiny smile before swiveling into his pod at seat 2A. All around him, passengers stowed bags, arranged pillows, and readied their devices for takeoff. He allowed himself a moment of calm. Then Heather appeared again. She materialized at the end of the aisle like a judge delivering a verdict, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. Malik had thought the double-scan ID request in the lounge was the end of it, but here she was, ready to prolong the ordeal. "Sir, I need to see your boarding pass again," she said, voice low but carrying. Malik inhaled slowly, unclipped the phone from his pocket, and held it out. The QR code glowed softly. In any other cabin, this would have been enough. The screen beeped once. Heather scanned again. Beep, and again. Beep. 3 beeps. 3 passes. Then, without a word, she tucked the phone into her apron pocket and stepped aside. He didn't allow himself to scowl. He simply nodded, tucked the phone away, and sat back. The pod closed in around him, a high-backed seat with a sliding privacy shield, a pop-out minibar, noise-canceling headphones resting on a soft armrest. He reached for a glass of still water that Ben, the junior flight attendant, had left on the tray table. The cold droplets beaded on the outside. He brought it to his lips and let the chill anchor him. But Heather wasn't done. As he sipped, she appeared at the other end of the cabin, quietly observing. When Lily stirred, smiling in her sleep, Malik offered a gentle coo and bent to smooth the blanket again. Heather's eyes flicked to the baby, then back to Malik. There was something in that look, an appraisal that went beyond policy. He stared straight ahead, refusing to react. Minutes later, Ben returned with a fresh cup of coffee for the passenger in 3D, and intentionally bypassed Malik's pod. Malik watched the coffee steam rise, heard the faint clink of ceramic against the tray. Every small gesture served to remind him that he was under a microscope. He reminded himself why he remained silent. Reputation, grace under pressure, shielding Lily from any scene. He tapped a notification on his watch, Ankita reporting that the Phoenix pilot program was stable now, and let himself drift into business mode. After takeoff, he'd review the charts and send out an approval for their next round of seed funding. He pictured the gleaming solar arrays under Arizona's sun, the success that came from proof of concept and perseverance. But the human element couldn't be coded away. A passenger in 2C, a well-dressed retired lawyer, finally broke the silence. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Heather. "My tablet's still on. I think I missed the announcement." His voice was measured, polite. Heather barely looked at him before turning back to Malik's pod, arms crossed. "Sir," she said, louder this time, "your device must be in airplane mode for departure." Malik blinked. The captain's welcome announcement was still in progress. They weren't airborne yet. He set his phone to airplane mode, an automatic muscle memory, then lifted it and let it drop into the pocket again. "Done," he replied softly. Heather offered a curt nod and stalked off. The lawyer exhaled and muttered, "Unbelievable." Malik caught his eye and offered a small, compassionate smile. The old man nodded back, a shared understanding passing between them. The seatbelt chime dinged, and the engines roared to life. Malik pressed himself into the seat cushion, scanning the cabin one more time. Heather hovered near the galley, behind the curtain, as if she were staging a silent vigil. He wondered what story she was telling herself about him, that he was a threat, or a curiosity, or something else entirely. In that moment, Malik's chest tightened with resolve. He reached into the seat pocket, retrieved the laminated photo of Lily, and pressed it to his heart. There she was, bright-eyed, toothless grin, oblivious to the world's cruelties. He swore that he would not let those prejudices define her future. He leaned back, resting his head against the cushion. The plane lifted off, nose angling skyward, and the runway lights fell away behind them. The cityscape below blurred, then vanished. In the hush of the cabin, he allowed himself one deep exhale. This was more than profiling. It was a power play. And power, he reminded himself, was best wielded quietly but decisively. He straightened his blazer, tapped his phone awake, and began dialing. He would give Heather one more chance to step away. After that, he'd make the call that would echo across 15 airports and change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. The cabin doors sealed behind him with a quiet hiss, and Malik Thompson tucked a loose strand of hair behind Lily's ear before settling her into the bassinet beside his pod. The Boeing 777-300ER's first-class cabin felt cocoon quiet, soft amber lights, polished walnut paneling, and seats that promised privacy with their sliding shields. A curved partition shielded 2A from the main aisle, but he knew that barrier meant nothing against Heather's determined gaze. He pressed a button on the armrest and the privacy screen fell into place. A built-in minibar popped out, its glass shelves stocked with miniature bottles and chilled mixers. He reached for a bottle of still water, the condensation cool against his fingertips. As he pivoted back toward Lily, Heather emerged, as inevitable as a storm front. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her tone neutral but her posture rigid. "I'm going to need to inspect the contents of your bag." Malik paused. He'd already submitted to 3 ID checks and 1 boarding pass scan. He'd been as polite as he could, but now, in the soft glow of this sanctuary, it felt like punishment. "I've got nothing to hide," he said, gesturing toward his simple diaper bag. It contained baby formula, wipes, and a few toys, nothing more than the tools of fatherhood. She flipped open the top flap and rifled through neatly packed bottles and burp cloths, as though searching for contraband. Her fingers lingered on a stack of folded onesies, her eyes flicking to his reflection in the overhead compartment. "Just making sure everything complies with regulations," she said, snapping the bag shut. Malik's chest tightened. "Of course," he replied softly. "Thank you." She gave a curt nod and strode away, clipboard in hand, as though the cabin were a tarmac runway and he were a suspicious cargo shipment. He exhaled, his normally steady breath catching. The muggy discomfort of being singled out pressed in on him. He closed the minibar and reached for his phone, as though checking email could soothe the sting. Nothing but a news alert about a pilot program success in Phoenix. He slipped the phone away before Heather could see. Ben, the junior flight attendant, glided down the aisle with a service cart stacked with pastries and fresh fruit. He paused at Malik's pod, offering a polite smile. "Coffee, Mr. Thompson." Malik forced a smile in return. "Please, black, no sugar." Ben nodded and moved on. Malik watched him distribute croissants to the wealthy executive in 1D, then operate the espresso machine for the movie star huddled 2 rows ahead. No glance in his direction. It felt deliberate. He leaned forward, adjusting Lily's blanket. Her tiny chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm, a reminder of why he fought to stay composed. She deserved better than what he was enduring. A hush settled as the cabin doors closed and the seatbelt sign chimed on. The captain's voice came over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, please ensure your devices are in airplane mode and securely stowed. We'll be pushing back momentarily." He followed the instruction without hesitation. Airplane mode on, phone tucked into the pocket. He glanced up to see Heather hovering again, arms crossed. This time, she watched him switch off the Wi-Fi indicator. "Thank you, sir," she said, just loud enough for the 2 passengers beside him to hear. Malik sat back, scouring the cabin for a staff directory or a supervisor. He found none. Only the pinprick lights of seatbelt signs and the occasional smile of a first-time flyer enthralled by the luxury. None of them knew he was on their side, that every small act of condescension against him felt like an insult to everyone who'd ever been judged by the color of their skin. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Heather slipped behind the service cart, restocking it with a meticulousness that bordered on performance art. She restacked napkins and polished glass rims, never once making eye contact with Malik. Each clatter of china was an audible punctuation of her disdain. He closed his eyes, picturing the fluorescent glow of the green grid control room, the engineers monitoring solar field outputs in real time, the data flowing seamlessly. Out there, his world was logic and precision. In here, a petty ritual of microaggressions reigned. Lily stirred, her forehead creasing in a half-wake. Malik leaned over and pressed a finger to her lips. "Shh, Daddy's right here." He brushed a kiss across her temple, drawing strength from her trust. The cabin pitched upward as they lifted off, the runway lights falling away. Malik exhaled, his tension partially released by gravity's pull, but Heather remained a specter in his peripheral vision, stalking the aisles with that clipped efficiency. 30 minutes into the flight, when the seatbelt sign finally dinged off, the cabin relaxed into its service routine. Ben emerged from the galley, offering drinks with genuine warmth. Malik accepted a coffee, savoring the aroma. But even as Ben filled the cup, Heather intercepted, removing the cup from the tray and swapping it for sparkling water instead. Ben faltered, eyes darting between Malik and Heather. Malik placed a hand on Ben's arm. "It's okay, Ben. Thank you." His tone left no room for misunderstanding. The junior attendant was not to be blamed. Heather's lips pressed into a thin line. She moved away, pushing the cart down the other aisle, stage managing every detail. Malik watched her go, anger simmering beneath the surface. The tension pressed so tightly he felt it in his jaw. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and considered the rules of engagement he'd learned. Stay calm, observe, then strike. He pictured David Parker, the AA CEO, in a corner office across the country. He remembered the flat tone on the line. "Understood. I'll send the order to Ops." That call was his weapon, his silent authority. He opened his eyes, met Heather's gaze across the rows for the first real moment. She seemed convinced she had won, that he would continue to endure, but he wouldn't, not for Lily's sake. He picked up his coffee, still too hot, but set it aside. With Lillian sleeping next to him, he no longer needed to consider restraint. It was time to press the button that would ripple through 15 airports and freeze $250 million in contracts. He drew a steady breath, reached for his phone, and waited. For the moment Heather's back was turned, for the cabin's hush to deepen, for the power of silence to compress into action. Then he dialed. Malik closed his eyes for a moment, adjusting Lily's little pink blanket as she slept soundly in the bassinet. The gentle rise and fall of her chest was the only rhythm that mattered right now. He inhaled, the familiar hush of the 787's first-class cabin pressing around him, soft amber lighting, the muted whirl of the ventilation system, and the gentle hum of conversations just beyond his pod's privacy screen. He'd weathered 3 ID checks, 1 boarding pass scan, and a barrage of silent snubs. He'd endured Heather rifling through his daughter's diapers and wipes, and watched her deliberately bypass his drink order after takeoff. Each indignity he swallowed, reminding himself, keep calm, don't create a scene, for Lily. But as the plane leveled off at 35,000 feet, and the seatbelt sign dinged off, Malik felt the tight coil of frustration in his chest begin to unspool. He took a slow sip of the sparkling water Ben had finally brought him, water that Heather had forgotten twice before. The effervescence tickled his throat, offering a fleeting reprieve. The cabin lights dimmed gently, signaling the start of meal service. Malik watched as Ben rolled the cart down the aisle, offering menus and warm towels with a genuine smile. He glanced over, hoping for even a hint of apology in Ben's eyes for the earlier delay. But Ben averted his gaze, as though afraid of drawing Heather's ire. Malik understood. Ben was new, eager to please, caught in Heather's orbit of authority, but his goodwill was another reminder. He was the one under scrutiny. He looked down at Lily, who stirred and then drifted back into sleep. He brushed a soft curl away from her forehead. She was why he kept his voice low, why he refused to make a scene. He'd flown halfway across the continent to celebrate with family, not to argue in a cabin. But as Heather reappeared at the front of the cabin, clipboard in hand, eyes cold and watchful, he felt his resolve begin to crack. "Mr. Thompson," she said, voice clipped. "I'm sorry, we've run out of still water. Would you like sparkling instead?" He lifted his glass, already filled with still water, to show her. "I appreciate it, but I already have water," he said evenly. She glanced at his glass, then at the empty carafe on the cart. "My mistake," she murmured, before turning away without another word. The exchange was small, absurd even. A single bottle of water, but it landed like a stone in his gut. He thought of Lily learning her ABCs one day, wondering why the world treated her differently. Would she, at 5 years old, ever understand why a grown woman refused to bring her father a glass of water at 10,000 meters? A passenger in 1A, a tech entrepreneur Malik recognized from a Forbes profile, caught his eye and offered a sympathetic nod. The lift of an eyebrow, a slight upturn of the lips. Enough to tell Malik he wasn't alone. But that gesture couldn't lift the weight of Heather's disdain. He leaned back and closed his eyes, picturing the desert sun over Phoenix and the hum of his microgrid arrays streaming power to struggling neighborhoods. He remembered the moment he pitched that first prototype, standing before a skeptical room of investors, charts projected on a cracked conference room wall, his hands trembling only slightly. He'd learned then that disproving one person's doubt could shift hundreds of minds. But here, at 35,000 feet, one person's prejudice threatened to overshadow a lifetime of achievements. He tapped his phone's screen, checking the time. 2 hours into a 6-hour flight. He still had to land in Los Angeles, taxi to an awaiting car, meet his parents, and plaster on a calm face for a celebratory dinner. He couldn't afford a meltdown here. Still, the humiliation gnawed at him. He remembered his mother's words on his first day at UCLA. "They'll see you coming, Malik. Sometimes they just won't believe your color, and your credentials can coexist." He'd carried those words through every boardroom battle. He'd learned to let his work speak and let others swallow their doubts. But Heather wasn't listening to his work. She was listening to something deeper, darker. He opened his eyes and watched her from the corner of his vision, rearranging glasses on a tray, stamping napkins with mechanical precision. Each motion was a silent insistence. "You don't belong here." He thought of Lily's mother, gone now, but always present in Lily's laughter. He thought of the first time he'd held his daughter, how her vulnerability had reshaped his priorities. He would protect her from bullies. Bullies at school, bullies in life, and yes, bullies at 35,000 feet. He tapped his fingers against the armrest, counting heartbeats. His pulse throbbed like a warning bell. He could feel the moment of decision settling around him. How much more will I take? Malik inhaled through his nose and exhaled, steadying himself. He looked straight ahead, swallowed the lump in his throat, and resolved. He would not endure this any longer. Behind him, the flight attendants began clearing trays. Heather's cart rolled past his pod, and she paused again, leaning in close enough that Malik could smell her floral perfume. "Sir," she said softly, but the words cut. "Your bassinet isn't allowed for use during turbulence. Please hold your child on your lap." He glanced at the seatbelt sign, still off, and at the captain's clipped announcement. "We expect smooth air for the next 30 minutes. His jaw tightened. Lily's safe in the bassinet, in the designated spot. But Heather's rule, when wielded as a weapon, wasn't about safety. It was about power. He reached down, unbuckled Lily, and lifted her into his arms. She smiled sleepily, pressing her cheek against his chest. His heart swelled with fierce love and protective rage. He sat back, cradling her, and looked at Heather as she retreated down the aisle. His gaze held no anger, only a quiet promise. The cabin fell silent around him, passengers sensing the tension. He felt the low hum of engines, the gentle vibration beneath him. He thought, I've reached my limit. He placed Lily on his lap, pressed the hold button on his handset, and watched Heather's retreating figure. When her back was turned, he tapped the speed dial for David Parker, the CEO he'd mentored, the man who owed him more than a glass of water. His finger hovered over the call button. The moment had come, the moment to transform endurance into action. He let the cabin hush deepen around him, and then, with his daughter securely in his arms, he pressed call. Malik settled Lily into her bassinet one more time, smoothing the blanket across her little shoulders. She yawned, then tucked her head against the soft mattress and closed her eyes. His heart swelled with fierce protectiveness. This flight had become more than just a trip home. It was a test of who he was willing to be for her. Around him, the cabin cast a soft glow. The seatbelt sign dinged off moments ago, and a hushed murmur spread as passengers opened menus and retrieved tablets. The 777-300ER's gentle hum was constant, comforting, and yet his own internal engine was racing. He replayed every slight. Heather's repeated ID checks, her refusal to serve him water, the way she'd hovered over the bassinet, insisting on arbitrary rules. Each action had been small, but altogether they'd formed a blockade of indignities. He closed his eyes, inhaled the recycled air, and let his mind drift back to that first meeting with David Parker 2 years ago. David had been intrigued by Green Grid's patented microgrid technology. Malik had walked into his office at AA headquarters, laid out a detailed proposal, and left with a handshake that sealed a pilot program. That program had blossomed into a national rollout, proof that he could move mountains with little more than data and determination. They think they can push me into silence, he thought. But I've never backed down when it matters. He glanced at Heather, who was arranging napkins near the galley, her posture rigid. She caught his eye for a split second, an unspoken challenge. Then she turned away, satisfied she'd maintained control. His jaw clenched. Malik pressed a fingertip to his temple, then exhaled, letting go of the years of practice he'd spent keeping calm in high-stakes boardrooms. This was high stakes. More than just his pride. It was Lily's right to travel without fear of discrimination. He reached down to the seat pocket and pulled out his phone. The laminated photo of Lily fell to his lap, but he didn't look at it. Instead, he tapped David Parker's speed dial, saved under David, AACEO. His thumb hovered over the call button. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple, and he wiped it away with the back of his hand. This is it. He pressed call. The line rang twice, then a groggy voice answered, activated through the airplane's Wi-Fi calling. David, voice low. Malik? It's 5:30 here. Everything okay? Malik drew a steady breath, speaking evenly, quietly, so that only David could hear. Malik. David, it's Malik. I'm on AA 102, first class, New York to LA. I need every Boeing 777-300ER in your fleet grounded immediately. Silence crackled through the speaker. David, sharp inhale. What? Malik, you can't just... Malik, firm. I'm being profiled, David. It started in the lounge, escalated on the jet bridge, and now in the cabin. 15 airports will refuse to serve until you handle this. I need ops to freeze every 777 schedule. Now. A pause. Then David's voice, clipped and urgent. David. Understood. I'm on it. Give me 30 seconds. Malik nodded to himself, though no one else could see. David, voice softening. I'm sorry, Malik. I'll call the captain. Malik. Thank you. He hung up and slid his phone back into his pocket. His pulse pounded in his ears. He looked across the cabin. Heather was still by the galley, restacking silverware. Ben hovered behind her, frightened. The passengers sensed something had changed. Eyes darted toward Malik, curiosity and confusion rippling through first class. Moments later, the captain's voice came over the PA. Captain, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to operational irregularities, we will be returning to JFK immediately. We apologize for the inconvenience." A collective gasp swept across the cabin. A woman behind Malik clutched her husband's arm. A business traveler in 3D muttered into his phone. Heather froze, her tray of napkins clattering onto the galley floor. Malik leaned forward and lifted Lily gently, cradling her in his arms. She opened her eyes and blinked up at him, unfazed by the high-altitude drama. He stroked her cheek and whispered, "It's okay, baby. All taken care of." Ben approached, eyes wide. "Mr. Thompson, Malik offered a small, wry smile. "It's fine, Ben. Thanks for the coffee." Ben exhaled, relief washing over him. "I'm glad." Heather backed away, eyes downcast. The tiny fortress of her authority had collapsed with one quiet directive. The cabin door to the cockpit opened, and the first officer poked his head out. "Flight attendant, can you confirm the call from ops?" Heather swallowed, then nodded shakily. "Yes, sir." A ripple of whispers spread. Some passengers cheered softly. Others just stared, processing. Malik felt a wave of satisfaction, not triumph, but the relief that comes from a burden lifted. He rocked Lily, humming a lullaby under his breath. He watched Heather slink back toward her station, her uniform crumpled and her composure gone. He didn't gloat. Instead, he closed his eyes and thanked himself for the calm he'd practiced for years. Outside the window, the plane banked and turned toward New York. The city lights shimmered as they descended, a reminder that progress sometimes demands bold moves. In that hush before landing, Malik realized something. His power wasn't a loud PR campaign or a flashy boardroom announcement. It was the quiet certainty of action. One phone call, one firm decision, one moment of refusal to endure. And for Lily, that was everything. The cabin lights dimmed to the service setting, and the hush was nearly silent. Just the soft hum of the 777's engines and the gentle click of readers opening menus. Malik Thompson held Lily close, her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. He felt the weight of her trust, reminding him why he'd made that call. Then, in a voice calm but unmistakably firm, the captain's announcement crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to unforeseen operational circumstances, we are unable to continue Flight AA-102 to Los Angeles at this time. We will be returning to JFK. We apologize for the inconvenience." Time seemed to slow. Passengers blinked, jaws slack. A tumble of whispered questions rippled through first class. What does operational circumstances mean? Are we safe? Is there a mechanical issue? Heather froze mid-step behind the service cart, napkin in hand, as though someone had pressed pause on her. Her posture straightened, then visibly sagged. The veil of her authority, built on petty slights and silent power plays, lifted in an instant. Malik felt a rush of relief surge through him. The decision he'd agonized over, the silent vow he'd made to Lily, was bearing fruit. It wasn't a dramatic explosion or a violent confrontation, just the steady logic of operations enforcing equity. He rocked Lily gently, whispering, "It's okay, baby girl. Daddy's got this." Ben, the junior flight attendant, peered around the galley curtain, eyes wide. He set down the coffee pot he was carrying, wiping his hands on his uniform. "Sir, are we really turning around?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. Malik offered a small nod. "Yes, Ben, we are." A ripple of murmurs swept through the cabin. The retired lawyer in 2C swiveled in his seat and tapped his wife's arm. The Hollywood screenwriter in 1A pulled out her phone, hands trembling as she typed a message. Some passengers exchanged looks of confusion. Others, those who'd sensed Heather's unfair treatment, broke into quiet applause. A single clap sounded, then another. Heather's face went pale. She clutched the edge of the service cart, her knuckles whitening. She glanced at the manifest clipped to her clipboard. Malik Thompson, Green Grid CEO, Seat 2A, and then at the cabin crew busily securing trays and napkins. In that moment, her script of microaggressions unraveled. Malik scanned the cabin, noting the blend of astonishment and solidarity on his fellow travelers' faces. He felt a swell of vindication, but also a twinge of sorrow that, in 2025, justice still required such an extreme measure. He tightened his grip on Lily, letting her warmth ground him. At the front of the cabin, the first officer's voice came through the curtain. "Flight attendants, please secure the cabin for landing. We will be back at the gate in approximately 20 minutes. The service lights blinked on, and Heather snapped into motion, barking orders to her team. "Collect all service carts. Check that all overhead bins are closed." She barked at Ben to secure the galley, then stamped toward Malik's pod. Malik met her eyes for the first time since the intercom announcement. There was no malice there, only shock and fear. She looked like a general who'd just watched her army surrender. He held her gaze for a heartbeat, then bowed his head slightly. No words were needed. The message was clear. The power play was over. Down the aisle, a steward assisted an elderly passenger whose oxygen tubing had fallen. Even in that moment, the crew's professionalism persisted. Malik watched them move through the cabin, offering blankets, securing loose items. The routine took on new meaning. They were undoing the tension, restoring calm after Heather's reign of quiet hostility. In the seat pocket, Malik's phone buzzed with a confirmation text. "All 777-300ER flights grounded. Ops team en route to gate. DP." He allowed himself a private smile. David had acted fast, honoring their partnership and Malik's integrity. He glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully through the upheaval. It seemed impossible that the world could still be so small, so unwilling to accept him, yet so instantly subject to his quiet resolve. He thought of his mother, of the night he'd told her he intended to found an energy company, and her words, "Change comes to those who dare." Now, at 35,000 feet, he dared, and won. The engine's hum deepened as the plane banked for the return flight. Outside the window, the sprawling lights of New York City blinked awake, welcoming them back. He placed a hand over his heart, feeling the echo of adrenaline fade into a peaceful determination. Ben reappeared with a fresh glass of water for Malik, placing it gently on the tray table. "For you, sir," he said softly. Malik reached out, placing a grateful hand on Ben's shoulder. "Thank you." Heather stood nearby, collecting her composure. She caught Malik's eye once more. This time, she didn't look away. It was a brief moment, but it spoke volumes. Acknowledgement, perhaps even remorse. Malik closed his eyes and exhaled, letting the moment wash over him. He didn't need a public apology, a personal vindication. This flight's reversal, this collective sigh of relief, was enough. The first step of change had been taken. As the seatbelt sign dinged on again and the plane cruised back toward JFK, Malik gently lifted Lily from the bassinet and placed her on his lap. He rocked her, humming the same lullaby he sang each night. This chapter of their journey was ending, but the real story was just beginning. He'd proven in the most visible way possible that discrimination would not go unchallenged. That one calm decision, one quiet call, could tilt the scales of power. And for Lily, he'd shown that justice, even at 35,000 feet, could be a father's most powerful gift. Malik settled Lily into his arms as the cabin door slid open onto the jet bridge at JFK. Around him, the first-class cabin was alive with stunned whispers, passengers exchanging incredulous glances, flight attendants hurriedly gathering carts. The Boeing 777-300ER braked into its stand, engines winding down with a throaty thrum. He stood, cradling Lily, and stepped onto the bridge. The glow of terminal monitors greeted him. Flight AA-102, returned to JFK. That was expected. What he hadn't anticipated was what he saw next. Across the concourse, an array of departure boards flashed in unison. JFK. All Boeing 777-300ER flights canceled LX. All Boeing 777-300ER flights canceled ORD. All Boeing 777-300ER flights canceled ANL. All Boeing 777-300ER flights canceled, and so on through DFW, DN, SFO. 15 of the nation's busiest hubs, every board a wall of red, CXL. A ripple of panic spread among travelers in the main terminal. Families clutching infants, business people's eyes widening, flight crews scrambling for answers. Malik felt a surge of astonishment. His call hadn't just grounded one flight. It had rippled through American Airlines' entire 777 fleet, triggering an automatic freeze in their integrated scheduling system. He edged through the crowd toward the arrivals hall, Lily warm against his chest, her breathing steady. A young mother, stranded with her toddler, pressed her face to her husband's shoulder and let out a shaky breath. A group of retirees checking the monitors let out a collective groan. A murmured chant rose. What the hell happened? Malik stepped into the light, the glass facade of JFK behind him, and saw the chaos in full bloom. Terminal staff gestured frantically to rebook counters. A bank of AA customer service agents at kiosks leaned into screens, typing furiously. He caught snippets. Ground ops just got a directive. All 777-300ER pilots show unavailable until further notice. We're escalating to the VP of Operations. He slipped his phone from his pocket. Notifications flooded in. NY Times. American Airlines grounds popular 777 fleet. CEO intervention sparks national travel disruption. Bloomberg. AA stock plummets 12% as 777 flights canceled. $250 million in fuel contracts frozen. Twitter trending. Had grounded 777. Thanks, Mr. Thompson. He tapped the stock app widget. AA shares were down a sharp 12% at the opening bell. A separate alert. Thousands of barrels of jet fuel were on hold. $250 million worth of contracts frozen until AA rewrote their compliance and diversity clauses. His jaw tightened. The scale of impact was staggering. Travelers delayed, hotels overbooked, soy-powered buses rerouted on short notice. The cost, not just the $250 million in operational freeze, but intangible blows to American Airlines' reliability. And yet, as he stood in the swell of confusion, Malik felt a quiet, fierce satisfaction. This was the power of silent action, the authority of logistics entwined with demand for justice. Behind him, a cluster of passengers recognized him. The lawyer from 2C, the tech CEO in 1A, even the starlet from row 1D. They approached with hesitant applause. An older gentleman in a tweed jacket extended his hand. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with respect. "I never thought I'd see this at 5 a.m. Malik nodded, shaking hand, murmuring that he was glad he could help. But he kept moving. Through the sea of displaced travelers, past rebooking lines that snaked back around check-in counters. He spotted Heather standing near a podium, uniform pristine, but shoulders slumped, eyes haunted. She caught his gaze and gave a small, ashamed nod before turning away. He continued to the curb outside, where a sleek black Cadillac Escalade idled, a corporate courtesy car. Catherine Cole, AA's vice president of in-flight services, and the flight captain stood beside it, both looking tense. Catherine pushed her hair back, approached him with measured steps. "Mr. Thompson," she began, voice caught between apology and disbelief. "On behalf of Mr. Parker and American Airlines, I'm so sorry. He held up a hand. "Thank you for coming. I appreciate you making this right." She exhaled, relief flooding her features. "We're arranging alternate flights for all passengers, hotel rooms, vouchers, you name it. And we'll meet with you as soon as possible to discuss the reforms you proposed." Lily stirred in his arms. Malik lifted her, pressing her cheek against his. "Take care of these people first," he said quietly, gesturing to the huddle of stranded travelers behind them. Catherine nodded. "Yes, sir. Right away." She turned and gave orders into her phone. Malik settled into the Escalade's back seat, Lily cooing in her car seat. The door closed, and the SUV pulled away from the curb, weaving past clusters of bewildered passengers. Through the tinted window, Malik watched the terminal bustle. He reflected on what had just unfolded. One phone call, 5 simple words. Ground every 737 300ER in your fleet. And an entire industry shuddered. Travel plans derailed, schedules upended, but lines of power lines crisscrossing thousands of miles of green grids. Those lines were unbroken, steady, in contrast to the turbulence he'd engineered. In the front seat, he could hear Catherine coordinating relief. Buses, meals, staff gloves. He pictured the boardroom at AA headquarters, executives reeling as their beloved 777s sat idle at gates nationwide, their stock legging out to a brutal new low. He thought of the public apologies, the headlines, the urgent memos demanding an overhaul of training and culture. Malik gazed at Lily's sleeping face. This is real change, he thought. Not a memo or a seminar, real, systemic change. Outside, the skyline of Manhattan receded into the smoggy sunrise as the Escalade headed to the remote rendezvous point. He felt a hush of anticipation for the meeting ahead, his first face-to-face with Parker and the AA executive team. He would press for the Applied Empathy Initiative, their VR training, measurable KPIs, and a zero-tolerance pledge. He would push for what Lily's future deserved. And, as the city grid surrendered to the open highway, Malik settled back, heart blazing with purpose. The ripple he'd created had become a wave of accountability crashing into the jet age. He whispered to Lily, "We've just begun, baby girl." The black Escalade eased onto a secluded section of the tarmac, pulling up beside a mobile command trailer emblazoned with the American Airlines logo. Malik Thompson buckled Lily into her car seat, then gathered her up gently in his arms. The jet's engines hummed softly nearby, a reminder of everything he'd just set in motion. Catherine Cole, AA's Vice President of In-Flight Services, stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for meeting with us. This way, please." She led him and Lily into the trailer, where Emma Castillo, the Senior Vice President of Customer Experience, stood behind a folding table. 2 aides hovered at the back, laptops open. Emma's face was tight with concern, but her voice carried genuine respect when she spoke. "Malik, I'm so sorry you and your daughter had to endure that. I want to hear exactly what we need to do to make this right." Malik set Lily on a blanket-draped chair and sat across from Emma. He folded his hands on the table, meeting Emma's eyes. "Thank you for taking the time," he said. "I appreciate your apology. But truthfully, I need more than words." Emma nodded. "Of course. What can I do?" He took a breath, recalling every indignity Heather had inflicted. The ID checks, the silent refusals, the regulations she'd weaponized. "First," he began, "I want a public apology, not just an internal memo or a brief announcement. You need to address this on your website, in your in-flight magazines, and through your social media channels. American Airlines must acknowledge that profiling happened, that it was unacceptable, and that you won't tolerate it." Emma flipped open a notebook. "A public apology. We can draft something today. We'll post it on all channels by tomorrow morning." Malik nodded. "Good. But that's step 1. Step 2 is systemic." He leaned forward. "You recently partnered with Green Grid on logistics. Now, I'm proposing the AA Green Grid Applied Empathy Initiative. It's not a PR seminar. It's VR-based experiential training. I want every AA employee, pilots, gate agents, flight attendants, ground staff, to complete modules that simulate real-world scenarios, racial profiling, language barriers, disabilities, family travel stress. They walk a mile in someone else's shoes. We track results with measurable KPIs, a 50% reduction in formal discrimination complaints within 6 months, blind audit testing of service interactions, quarterly progress reports made public." Emma's pen moved rapidly. "VR empathy training, experiential modules, KPIs, yes, that's comprehensive. We'll need to pilot it first, of course. Perhaps start with senior cabin crew, then roll out company-wide." "Exactly," Malik said. I recommend a pilot on your top 100 flights, those with the highest first-class volume, so you have early data, then expand to every route within a year. We co-chair a joint oversight committee, Green Grid, and AA leadership, plus external advisors from civil rights organizations. Emma looked up. A joint committee sounds fair. We want transparency, and you want integration of data analytics. Our ops folks can handle that. We'll allocate budget immediately. Good, Malik replied. One more thing. Disciplinary protocols. Situations like mine shouldn't result only in a suspension or a cursory review. You need a zero-tolerance policy clearly defined in your employee handbook. If an employee profiles a passenger, there must be mandatory retraining and, for repeat offenses, termination. And the public should know how you handle each case. Emma's expression was earnest. We can update our policies and publish a summary of actions taken in response to complaints. Monthly disclosures, perhaps. Malik let that sink in. Monthly disclosures are perfect. It holds people accountable. It shows you're serious. Catherine, standing by the door, interjected quietly. We'll draft the policy changes and release schedules by end of week. Malik smiled. A small, satisfied curve of his lips. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. He paused, looking at Lily napping softly in her car seat. This isn't about Heather alone. It's about making sure no other father or mother has to fight for their dignity at 35,000 feet. Or on any flight, ever. Emma leaned back, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Malik, this is visionary. It's going to take effort, but I genuinely believe it can transform our culture. I want to apologize again, personally, to you and to Lily. Malik inclined his head. Thank you. I accept that. But let's keep our eyes on the bigger goal, preventing the next incident, not just reacting to it. She reached across the table and offered her hand. Agreed. Let's do this together. He shook her hand firmly. Let's do it. Behind them, a series of laptop chimes signaled that Emma's aides were sending draft announcements and policy outlines. Malik scanned the room. Catherine's relieved smile. Emma's determined gaze. The aides eager typing. He felt a surge of hope. This meeting marked the true turning point from confrontation to collaboration. They stepped out of the trailer together into the morning sun. The night's dramatic reversal had given way to a clear plan forward. Emma paused, raising her voice so a cluster of assembled crew members could hear. Attention, everyone, she called. I want you to know we're making major changes, publicly and permanently. We will be launching an empathy initiative with our partners at Green Grid. I'll be in touch with all of you about training schedules. Thank you for your patience and professionalism. Murmurs of approval rippled through the group. Crew members exchanged nods, some hesitant, others quietly relieved. Malik lifted Lily into his arms and smiled down at her. She yawned, waking just long enough to give him a toothless grin. He laughed softly and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Ready to go home, kiddo? He asked. She cooed in response, as if she understood. He turned to Emma and Catherine. Thank you for being willing to change. Emma's eyes glistened. Thank you for holding us to a higher standard. They watched the freshly painted American Airlines jet taxi past, its silver fuselage gleaming in the sunlight. The journey back to LA would be smoother now, not just for Malik and Lily, but for every passenger who boarded an AA flight in the days and months to come. And as Malik settled into the back of the Escalade, cradling Lily, he felt the quiet power of a promise fulfilled, and the boundless possibility of change that begins when one person refuses to stay silent. 2 days after that tarmac meeting, Malik Thompson strode into American Airlines' new empathy lab, a converted hangar outfitted with VR stations, modular seating pods, and data dashboards humming on giant screens. Across the room, VR headsets lay next to passenger service carts and airline uniforms. He grinned, heart racing with the same excitement he'd felt when Green Grid launched its first solar microgrid. Emma Castillo met him at the entrance. Welcome to your baby, she said, gesturing at the setup. 5 pilot flights, 50 crew members, 2 VR modules ready to go. Malik nodded. They distilled months of planning into 2 immersive experiences. Profiled at the gate, users wear a VR headset and play a passenger navigating secondary screening, feeling the anxiety of extra checks, repeated ID requests, and idle stares. Family flight stress. A simulation where you're a parent managing a restless toddler, juggling boarding passes, luggage, and cranky seatmates. Each module automatically records biometric data, heart rate spikes, gaze fixation, decision latency, and follows with a guided debrief. How did that feel? What assumptions did you make? Catherine Cole joined them, carrying a tablet. Our baseline data shows an average stress spike of 35% in profiled at the gate, and frustration scores nearing 80% in family flight stress. We've set our first KPI, reduced discriminatory behavior incidents by 50% on these 5 flights within 3 months. Malik felt a surge of satisfaction. Let's add a 3rd module. Language barrier, he suggested. Imagine being a non-native speaker trying to understand announcements and fill out forms under time pressure. Emma smiled. Already live as version 1.1. He laughed. Impressive. They walked past a row of screens displaying live dashboards, complaint trends, anonymous employee feedback, VR completion rates. An external advisor from the ENBO ACP and a UX specialist for accessibility reviewed the metrics. Malik paused at one chart. 72% of participants reported newfound empathy toward families and minority travelers. Those numbers, he said, pointing. That's real change. Behind them, Ben, now a certified empathy facilitator, led 3 flight attendants through the VR experience. He paused the simulation. I honestly didn't realize how small actions, like skipping someone's drink order, can feel oppressive, one attendant admitted. Malik caught her eye and nodded. That transparency, that willingness to admit fault, was the program's true power. Emma tapped a button, projecting the rollout plan. Phase 1. Pilot on 5 high-volume first-class flights over 6 weeks. Phase 2. Expand to top 100 routes by Q4. Phase 3. Integrate VR into annual recertification for all AA staff. Catherine added, We'll publish quarterly reports, transparent KPIs, passenger surveys, disciplinary actions. No more backroom cover-ups. Malik closed his eyes for a moment, picturing Lily growing up to travel the world without fear. He opened them and looked at Emma. We're not just checking a box. We're changing hearts and minds. Emma extended her hand. To the AA Green Grid Applied Empathy Initiative. He shook it. To a future where everyone belongs at 35,000 feet. 6 months had passed since Malik Thompson's quiet phone call reverberated through American Airlines' entire 777 fleet. He found himself back in the same hangar-turned empathy lab, but it looked entirely different now. VR stations hummed with more frequent use, and data dashboards glowed with months of solid results. Emma Castillo greeted him at the entrance, holding 2 envelopes. You'll want to see these, she said with a grin. Malik opened the first one. First-class revenue plus 15%. He lifted an eyebrow. That's beyond projections. Emma nodded. Our premium flyers appreciate the service improvements. Complaints dropped 52% on pilot routes. He glanced at the second envelope. Formal discrimination complaints, 50%. He let out a low whistle. A real impact. Behind them, Catherine Cole stepped forward, projecting a chart onto the big screen. A line graph showed first-class complaints plummeting from 84 incidents per 1,000 flights to 42. Bar charts displayed a 15% uptick in first-class ticket sales on the 5 pilot routes, and the program had already rolled out to 20 additional high-traffic flights. This, Catherine announced, is what happens when you invest in empathy. Malik felt a swell of pride. He watched as crew members who'd once worn skepticism on their faces now exchanged knowing nods. Even Heather, no longer in first-class service, had completed the modules and was now an instructor, guiding new hires through Profiled at the Gate. Emma led him to a small stage at the back of the hangar, where a modest audience of AA executives, crew trainers, and external advisors gathered. "On behalf of American Airlines," she began, "it's my honor to present this award to the man who helped us redefine customer experience and corporate responsibility." She handed Malik a framed certificate, AA Green Grid Applied Empathy Initiative, in recognition of transformative leadership. The applause was warm, genuine. He accepted the award, placing one hand over his heart. He cleared his throat. "Thank you. When we started this, it was about something simple: dignity. No one should ever have to prove they belong. Today, thanks to hardworking teams, local partners, and the support of everyone here, we've reduced real suffering at 35,000 feet and made better business in the process." A ripple of laughter and applause followed. He smiled down at Lily, now a curious 2-year-old exploring a toy globe at his feet. Her eyes sparkled, unaware she'd been the catalyst for all this change. He knelt to her level, wrapping an arm around her. "We did this together, kiddo." Turning back to the crowd, he concluded, "This is proof that empathy isn't just a buzzword. It's a strategy, one that saves money, builds loyalty, and most importantly, honors every passenger's humanity. Let's keep flying the world forward." As the crowd dispersed, Emma and Catherine approached with refreshments. Catherine raised her cup of sparkling water. "To you, to Lily, and to a future where every flight feels like home." Malik clinked his glass, smiling. "To belonging, for everyone." And with that, the hangar buzzed anew, not with tension or conflict, but with the quiet hum of progress, a testament to what one call and a bold vision could achieve. 6 months after the AA Green Grid Applied Empathy Initiative rolled out, Malik Thompson found himself settling into seat 3C on a late-morning American Airlines flight bound for Miami. Lily, now a curious 2-year-old in a forward-facing car seat, waved at the overhead bins as they taxied out of the gate. It felt surreal. No edge of tension, no lingering hostility. Just the familiar hum of engines and the soft murmur of first-time flyers marveling at the privacy pods. As the seatbelt sign dinged off and the service began, a young flight attendant approached with a bright smile. Malik recognized her from the post-training roster. Jessica, one of the first cohort of cabin crew to complete the VR empathy modules. "Mr. Thompson?" she said, kneeling beside his pod. Lily reached out to touch her name badge, and Jessica laughed softly. "I just wanted to say thank you. Your program, it changed the way I see everything. I never realized how those little acts, skipping someone's drink, making assumptions, could hurt so much." Malik's chest warmed. "Thank you for giving it a chance," he replied, brushing a loose curl from Lily's forehead. "It's not easy to admit we're wrong." Jessica nodded, eyes sparkling. "It's not. But I see my colleagues now, gate agents, pilots, ground staff, really listening. We've all become more mindful. I've even caught myself pausing before I say something, asking myself how I'd feel if the roles were reversed." She glanced at Lily, cooing, "And I want every child to feel welcome, just like she does." He offered a genuine smile. "That's exactly why we did this." She rose, and in that moment, the service cart rolled down the aisle, stocked with fresh fruit and coffee. Around them, other attendants moved with a confidence and warmth that felt different. Malik realized he wasn't the only one noticing. The business traveler in 2D smiled appreciatively. A retired professor in 4A gave a thumbs up as her tea appeared without delay. Lily reached for Malik's hand and pointed at Jessica. "Hi," she said, her small voice full of wonder. Jessica leaned down, whispering, "Hey there, pumpkin," and Lily giggled in return. Malik caught that exchange and felt a hush of gratitude. Empathy had become the new standard, and kindness the baseline. He leaned back, gazing out the window as the Atlantic's blue shimmered beneath them. The old days of microaggression felt like a distant memory, replaced by moments of genuine connection. A flight attendant from rows behind passed him a note on a Bar F napkin. "Your daughter brightened my day. Thank you, for her and for all of us." Malik folded the napkin and slipped it into his pocket. He closed his eyes, listening to Lily's soft breathing and the gentle drone of the engines. He thought of his mother, of the little boy who dreamed of powering neighborhoods, of the man who had quietly insisted enough at 35,000 feet and sparked a revolution in the skies. As the skilled crew continued their seamless service, Malik wrapped an arm around Lily and whispered, "We just soared to a better world, kiddo." And in the hush of that cabin, he knew the real journey was only beginning. If this story inspired you, smash that like button, share with a friend, and subscribe for more powerful true stories.